John, thanks for being here. Anyway, to all of you here today, thank you for taking time out of your day to come out and hear me speak. I'm here today to assert once and for all who is the real education candidate in this race, and it's certainly not Tom Wolf. In order to understand why I would be a far better champion for our parents, students, and teachers than Governor Wolf, you have to look at his record. Throughout Governor Wolf's first term in office, he's only signed 1 in 4 budgets. And remember, I was serving in the Senate. I had a front row seat to watch that he did not sign 3 budgets. Despite what he says, the truth is that time and time again, he's refused to authorize necessary increases to basic education. The truth is, he was content to stomp his feet and snub the efforts of the Republican legislature when they put more dollars into the classrooms. The truth is, Tom Wolf held schools hostage and put many on the brink of closing. When it's all said and done, and you look at the math, Tom Wolf has only authorized $100 million in increases for basic education. I voted for more than that. But the real tragedy with the governor, other than he continuously tries to take credit for education increases he never signed off on, is that he actually facilitated the redirection of education increases many of my colleagues and I earmarked for students away from the classroom. That's right, folks. If you want someone to blame for all those horror stories about teachers having to buy their own supplies and children eating falling paint chips in classrooms from the ceiling, blame Governor Wolf for vetoing true pension reform. And don't take my word for it. Even the Philadelphia Inquirer noted that 2/3 of all education funding over Governor Wolf's term in office has gone to pension costs. So all of this means one thing and one thing only. Governor Wolf has been a failure for education in Pennsylvania. And our students, teachers, and parents desperately need something better. That's why 2 weeks ago I unveiled a detailed, substantive education plan that enacts the innovative reforms that we've been lacking under Governor Wolf. Under my plan, students, teachers, parents, administrators, and taxpayers all come out on top. The main component of my proposal is to invest over $1 billion into public education in the first year, the most ever in a single budget. These record investments will come from a $700 million direct infusion of money through the current funding formula so more schools receive fair and adequate funding. Secondly, the creation of the RISE block grant, which will provide access to $150 million in additional funding for our schools that implement evidence-based reforms. The creation of the Teach to the Top block grant, which will provide up to $150 million to reward and retain our best and brightest educators. And finally, the creation of a remedial line item within the budget of $25 million to appropriate grants for school districts implementing plans to assist struggling teachers. Between these 4 funding mechanisms, all students and teachers can gain from this education plan. And the taxpayers will win too, because the most important part of my plan is that we can do it without raising taxes on hardworking Pennsylvanians. We can do it by tightening our belts. We'll tighten our belts by reviewing and eliminating corporate tax credits that have no direct economic impact. We'll tighten our belts by zero-based budgeting, balancing our checkbook, privatizing the sale of liquor stores, by leasing our liquor wholesale system, by implementing workable welfare reforms, and by enacting other cost-saving plans so the taxpayer won't have to pay a penny for what I am proposing. All these investments will go towards funding the improvements our education system has been deprived of for far too long. Under my plan, we'll be able to retain top-notch educators, which is the most important factor in giving our children a top-notch education. We'll be able to modernize our curriculum so that we are preparing kids for college and at the same time make sure kids who don't go to college have options that prepare them to work in STEM fields and fill the 200,000 skilled labor positions we have available. I have a clear plan, and my plan matches everything I've stood for in both the private sector and my time in the Senate. Many have tried to argue that I've made the case in the past that schools don't need more money. That's never been the case. What I've said is clear. We do not need more money for Tom Wolf to use as a political payoff to the government employee unions that line his campaign coffers. Under Tom Wolf, the money we've spent has been effective at best. My plan is all about pay for performance. Rather than throwing money at the problem, the block grant components I'm going to put in place, as well as the leadership I'm going to provide regarding how schools spend their money, will make sure we are getting quality returns on our investments. And while I have a plan that encourages innovation and reform, Tom Wolf, the so-called education governor, has a plan that encourages no one and nothing. It's disastrous. Let me tell you why that's the case. In June, the governor's chief of staff announced that the governor would be supportive of House Bill 2501, a bill that would immediately run all public education dollars through the 2016 funding formula, resulting in crippling costs to 70% of schools and a windfall for the Philadelphia School District. The governor reiterated his support for that plan a week later when he told WHYY that he thought all the state basic education money should be run through the fair funding formula. The blowback of these remarks was very uncomfortable for Governor Wolf. Independent news outlets, school officials, school districts, and even legislators from his own party sounded the alarm and took the governor to task for the cuts he was pushing on rural and suburban school districts. In order to quell the backlash, the governor spent the preceding weeks flip-flopping around trying to slither out of his dilemma. He has a dilemma because if he wants to run all public education dollars through the 2016 formula, as he said he did, then 70% of schools would suffer drastic cuts, while Philadelphia would see a drastic increase. All these cuts would be so severe that some schools would either close, our property taxes will skyrocket to keep them afloat. On the other hand, if the governor doesn't want these districts to suffer massive cuts, he'd have to increase spending by billions. Now, where do you think Tom Wolf is going to get those billions? That's right, you guessed it, more taxes, a heck of a lot more taxes. But to date, Governor Wolf has denied taxpayers, students, teachers, and parents the honesty and clarity that they deserve. And while he won't come clean about his plan, he's criticized my plan, which finds an extra $1 billion within existing state revenue, calling it abracadabra math. That should tell you all you need to know about Tom Wolf's lack of ingenuity and his ability to find extra dollars without passing the burden on to the people of Pennsylvania. And in case you don't believe me, just listen to what the governor has said in the past. And I quote, "There is a need to understand the investment that is education. There is a choice of supporting public education, but it comes with the cost of the taxes and the possibility of losing a home for some." To the seniors of Pennsylvania, let me translate that statement that I just read to you from Governor Wolf. What this means is he could care less about you and that you are choking on school property taxes and may lose your home. The simple truth is, if the governor wants to avoid cutting funding for rural and suburban schools, and wants to instead increase funding by the billions, he has to support crippling tax increases. My plan calls for no taxes, and it's not abracadabra math. It's rock-solid accounting and responsible management the stakeholders deserve. So the contrast in this could not be more clear. The governor knows this, and it terrifies him. That's why he's avoiding talking to all of you and getting in front of the people of Pennsylvania to debate me. He's hoping he can run out the clock and not have to tell hardworking Pennsylvanians that he wants to deliver either funding cuts for 70% of their schools or raise their taxes by record numbers. The education governor doesn't want to let us know what he's for when it comes to education. And this is no surprise. He did the same thing in 2014. Tom Wolf hid from Pennsylvanians that he wanted billions in tax increases while he was campaigning. Does anybody remember Tom Wolf calling for a broad-based tax increase in 2014? And then he proposed the largest tax increase in history just after taking office in 2015. The people of Pennsylvania should not be fooled again. And with the help of the media and responsible reporting, they won't be. You have the opportunity and the responsible to go to the governor and ask him whether he is for cuts or taxes. You have the opportunity to tell voters the truth. But instead, you've become distracted. Rather than covering things that matter, you focused on things that don't. Take a minute and imagine this scenario. It's January of 2019. Tom Wolf is sworn in again for a second time, and he announces a $6 billion broad-based tax increase. Voters will be outraged. They'll say, but we didn't vote for that. We didn't know he was going to do that to us. They'll come to the media. They'll ask you why you didn't warn them. They'll ask you why you didn't spend more time bringing Tom Wolf's tax policies to light instead of focusing on Russian jokes and who supposedly campaigned with who and the net worth of one candidate compared to another. Then they'll ask you why you didn't do your jobs and give them the facts. So I stand here today to let you know that I have a plan for education that doesn't raise taxes, and I'm confident with my plan. So I'm asking for the governor to let us know what he's for regarding education. Right now, you're letting the governor hide from the education predicament he now finds himself in. You're letting him rely on slick, negative ads that manipulate things I've said instead of having an honest debate with me about issues that matter. But don't do it for me. I'm asking you make the governor come clean about whether he's for taxes or cuts for the people who matter. Do it for the poor senior couple that have been in their home for 40 years, only to be forced from their home due to ever-increasing school taxes that they never saw coming. Do it for all the Pennsylvanians who deserve to know if they are choosing between lower taxes and higher taxes over the next 4 years. Do it for the school districts that could end up being blindsided by crippling funding cuts. Let me be clear. I don't think the media is the enemy of the people, but I do believe you have a responsibility to the people to focus on issues that matter to them. And you have a responsibility to our democracy to do it in a way that is fair. Rather obsessing over everything that I might say, as my friend John Bears over here. John, you remember jokingly I said one time that maybe I should be on 15 medications before I speak because I'm sometimes so passionate that sometimes my mouth moves faster than my brain. Cover issues, John, like education, jobs, and taxes with that same vigor. Your profession and the democratic process will be better for it. And so will the people of Pennsylvania. Thank you.